All right, everyone, good morning and happy Friday. I'm excited to be here with you to talk a little bit about our work and our project, and also to get to eat donuts with you all this morning, which is a real highlight of a way to spend any morning for me. So as Phyllis said, my name is Hannah Sunderman. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in a bit. There's a few other folks on the project who I'll introduce in a second as well. The title of our work is Cultivating Science Communicator Identities, Increasing Agricultural Scientists' Identity-Based Motivation to Communicate Through Identity Modeling and Training. As was mentioned, this was a seed-funded project, funded in part by the Susan Duncan Innovation Agriculture Seed Grant, which is a project that's really unique in that it's jointly supported by the Center for Advanced Innovation in Agriculture, or CAIA, as well as ICAT, which is why we get to be here today, the Virginia Agricultural Experiment Station, as well as VT-ARC, which is the Virginia Tech Applied Research Corporation. So really bringing together a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary approach, which you'll see reflected throughout our project as well. So to start off, I wanted to introduce our team members. So you'll see here, our first one is Dr. Jean Perella, who's the PI of the project. Dr. Perella is out on parental leave, but she sends her greetings to all of you. I wish she was here today, as her area of expertise is really the science communication component. So I hope I will represent her and her field well today. Dr. Perella, Jean is an assistant professor, again, of life science communications in the Department of Agricultural Leadership and Community Education, which is also my home department. So I am Dr. Hannah Sunderman. I'm the co-PI on the project. My area of specialization related to this project is identity development, identity modeling. So you'll see that come through a little bit later today. And again, my overall field is leadership, and my home department is ALCE. We are also so fortunate that joining us on the project, we have two folks from the Center of Communicating Science here at Virginia Tech, and Jean and I have been fortunate to collaborate with them, learn from them, particularly about training associated with science communication. So first we have Patty Ron, who's a co-PI and professor of performance and voice, and she's the director of the center. And then Dr. Carrie Kroller, who's the Associate Director of the Center of Communicating Science. So with that introduction, let me tell you a bit about where we'll head today with our presentation. So our project overview, this was our real question that we're seeking to address through a variety of methods. How might we increase science communication among agricultural scientists through the development of a science communicator identity? So that's where we're starting. The 5,000-foot view, we'll break that down a little bit more. Our purpose, building upon that, my clicker wants to work, is to cultivate science communicator identities within a cross-disciplinary consortium of agricultural science through both research, which is a lot of what Jean and I are focused on, and training, which is what Patty and Carrie are bringing to this project. This merges three research areas. So again, that interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary approach of agricultural and life sciences communication. My area, which is leadership identity development, but more broadly, this is focused on identity development. And then the final one is performance-based approaches to science communication training. So here's where we're headed with the rest of our time together this morning to give you a roadmap. First, I'll talk about why does science communicator identity matter? Why do we care about the study and training of this topic? Then we'll get into what specifically we are doing in our project. The third thing we'll focus on is what is innovative about our approach. And then I'll end by telling you what have we found so far. We're about halfway through this project, so I'll give you an update, as well as share a bit about where we're headed with the remainder of our work together. So why does science communicator identity matter? Why is this topic of importance to me and perhaps to you? So why? We know that science communication, which is defined as sharing specialized knowledge or research outcomes with people outside of academia, so outside of the academy, is increasingly needed. And this is in part because trust in science is decreasing. That's no surprise to anyone in the room. But since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, we had a 16% decrease. So in four years, a 16% public decrease in trust in science. So the ability for scientists to communicate with the public in a way that fosters trust, for scientists to see this as part of their work, is essential. You can see that in a quote, "The science isn't finished until it's communicated," which is something that, of course, in a project focused on science communication, we really believe in, focusing on that public outreach. This is also extra important at an institution like Virginia Tech, which has a land-grant mission, where part of our work is outreach into the community and extension, so really living beyond the walls of the academy. So despite these things, we know it's important both at a global and national level, as well as uniquely to Virginia Tech. We still require more communication. Lack of communication from scientists persists for a variety of reasons. Confidence, lack of training, lack of perceived opportunity, which are some of the things that we're addressing in our current work. So building on the why, I told you why science communication. Now let's think about why identity. Why are we introducing this component of identity into science communication? So identity influences human responses to the social world. Of course, how we see ourselves influences how we respond to those around us. And what's notable is that it often precedes human behavior. So identity, you'll see on the bottom, precedes sustained behavior. So in the field of leadership, which is mine, we know that if we want people to engage in sustained leadership behaviors over time, collaboration building, coalition building, engaging with those around them, building positive relationships, it is essential that they first see themselves as a leader in order to have that sustained engagement over time. So we're interested in applying that to the realm of science communication. And notably, identity has often been ignored in understanding faculty's challenges with communicating science. So there's a clear link between behavior and identity, yet when we're trying to cultivate the behaviors of science communication, we have not made that link as clear in the field and work previously. Therefore, we are examining the variables that predict science communicator identity, which is how one sees oneself as a science communicator, that's the definition, and utilizing a variety of approaches, performance-based approaches to science communication training to foster science communicator identity. And I see we have Carrie has joined us in the back, Dr. Kroller. So Dr. Kroller will be here to answer any of the great questions on training, and hopefully we'll be back with you at a future date to talk more about this component as well. So what specifically are we doing in our project? You got a little bit of our why around science communicator identity, but what does that mean for the work we're doing on this seed-funded project? So we'll start by first talking about, at a higher level, how are we engaging with those around us? So partnerships, we are collaborating with a consortium of agricultural scientists. Identity development does not just happen individually, it's interactional, and so it was really important to us that agricultural scientists, our target audience, had an opportunity to engage with each other. Also regarding data and input, we are collecting data and feedback from agricultural scientists to build a model of science communicator identity. Now, of course, this is just for agricultural scientists, but we anticipate it will have a more expansive or be able to be expanded in future research to other populations. Also building a tailored workshop, and again, this is Carrie and Patty's great work, customizing a day-long workshop for the consortium of agricultural scientists based on the research findings. And then finally, a practicum, so helping consortium members identify opportunities to participate in science communication. So giving them access and opportunity to practice the skill and the behavior of science communication. So quickly, some of the objectives of our work is first to establish that consortium. So we have our first consortium of participants, 11 participants. We recruited from scientists funded by ICAT and Kaya, and they were incentivized through a $400 stipend for their time. The second thing is to identify psychological, social, and behavioral characteristics of agricultural scientists' science communicator identities. And so this is the development of a survey instrument. We distributed this. We had about 62 participants, and I will share the results of this survey with you all in a little bit, and the variables we found to be really predictive of the development of science communicator identity. The third thing is building that identity model. So we have the quantitative data, and then we'll be doing focus groups in the next few weeks to help clarify and expand upon our quantitative findings. And then our fourth and final thing is based on the other work that we've done, is facilitating that workshop for the consortium, seeking to increase identity-based motivation to engage in the work of science communication. And then again, building in opportunities for them to discuss and practice the work and the behavior of science communication. So what is innovative about our approach? You know why we're doing it, you know what we're doing, but why is this innovative or perhaps important? So the first thing that adds a novelty to this project is, again, that it frames science communicator identity as one, science communication as an identity we hold, as well as a social identity. So it's not just individual, like I said, but it's something that we build interactionally. Identity is a process of claiming and granting, meaning that I, through my behavior, how I see myself, might claim the identity of a science communicator. But identity is also a process of granting a social identities, which means that the people around you see you as a science communicator and affirm that to you. And that's why the consortium was so important, that it's not just me in my office doing workshops by myself to learn about science communication, but rather that we're practicing together the work of science communication, where we're both claiming that identity of science communicator as well as granting it to our peers and colleagues. This merges fields of communication, psychology, sociology, and creative expression. It also requires a nuanced understanding of how identity shapes social norms among agricultural scientists, which you will see come out in our survey findings. Artistic expression, again, this is Patty and Carrie's great work, incorporating performance-based training as a transformative tool for scientists and positioning scientists to discover and embody their identities as science communicators. So really working on the embodiment of this behavior. And the final thing is expected impact, cultivating agricultural scientists' communicator identities, fostering a culture of science communication. So that's a real key to the building of identities, as seen as important in the lives of those around you. We anticipate our model being applicable beyond the agricultural sector through future research, and we're also in the process of preparing to pursue an NSF grant in the fall based on this preliminary findings. So what have we found so far? We're about halfway through our project. We want to give you some insight into the results of our work. So as I mentioned, we conducted a survey at the end of this fall semester. Our theoretical framework, I will touch on just briefly, is the three components of communication theory of identity, which is personal. So this is science communicator self-efficacy, for example. The second one is enacted aspects of identity, so frequency of engagement in science communication. And the third and final component is relational, which are things like institutional and mentor support. So we grouped our survey into those three areas based on a previously established theory. For participants, we recruited from the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, and we had 62 responses, which was a 31% response rate. And here's the regression model that we found. So science communicator identity was the variable we were interested in understanding the predictors for. And these are the 5 that emerged with a significant model. So 3 of the variables themselves were significant, but the overarching model, you can see at the bottom, the regression model accounted for 51.75% of the variance in science communicator identity. So these 5 really worked together to produce a significant model. And our 5 variables predicting science communicator identity were responsibility to communicate science, confidence in science communication skills, perceived public interest in science, so not actual public interest in science, but what the agricultural scientists perceived to be the public interest in science, mentorship, and then subjective norms around science communication. So what does this mean? What do our results mean? What might we recommend based preliminarily on just the survey results, so without the corresponding focus group data? Seeing that responsibility and subjective norms were 2 variables that were significantly contributing to the model, we recommend faculty job descriptions and contracts include public dissemination of knowledge, so faculty know that it's an expectation, a responsibility of their role, as well as a norm within their college or department. The second thing, recognizing responsibility, subjective norms, and mentorship as variables in this model, is that we promote increased support through grants, promotion structures for science communication from mentors and higher education organizations. So from those around us, again, contributing to the socialization and the perceived importance. The third thing we recommend, confidence being a predictor, ways that we can focus on building up confidence around science communication will be a focus in our focus groups. But one preliminary suggestion is that training in science communication. So we're delighted that that's part of our project already built in. And our final recommendation, knowing that public and interest in science was a key contributor in the model, is recommending fostering public interest in science through publicly relevant scientific research, through expanding science communication media outlets, so continuing to foster that link and connection between the public interest and the work of scientists, really centering that within our organizations, our institutes, our departments, and our colleges. So with that, we want to thank you for your time. I will turn it over to questions. I would also love, since we have Dr. Kroller with us, for insights that you have or questions that you have for her, either during the question and answer session or after. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Hannah. What questions do we have? I have one that we can get started with.
Great.
These folks are getting ready. And that is, can you talk to us about the identity, obviously not the identities, but the identities of the folks who are who participated or are participating in the study? Are they students? And how did they come to be agricultural science communicators?
Great question. Okay, so we'll start with our population for the survey. So that was faculty across the College of Agriculture and Life Scientists. And then they identified as being an agricultural scientist. So that was our population, 62 participants, fairly representative of the college. And then we had for the our consortium of 11. So we recruited from any faculty who'd been funded by ICAT or Kaya within the past, I think, 5 years, and emailed them out, promoting the opportunity, having them sign up, and from that, they self-selected. So 11 people who perceived agricultural scientists and identified as wanting further training in science communication. So whether our cohort or consortium sees themselves as science communicators is yet to be determined, but had some type of self-selection into the project.
Great. We have one from online. This is from Ed. As you mentioned, we are in an era where science is less trusted. In my experience, part of this stems from the perception that academia ignores the concerns of the general public. How do you propose that we both communicate our findings with the public while showing that we are listening to the needs and concerns of those outside of academia?
That is a great question. As I said, I wish Dr. Perella was here too. Perhaps Carrie has more insight on this, as science communication is really her area of specialty. From my limited knowledge around science communication, it seems that I would say communication is not just talking. So when we talk about the work of science communication and a science communicator identity, it doesn't just mean training people to speak. Communication is also listening. So the training, the engagement. I tried to even in my pictures select images that weren't a scientist standing at the front of a lecture hall like I'm doing right now and speaking out to those people, but trying to even utilize through our images a more dialogic picture of science communication where it is interactional, it's relational, it's process-oriented, as opposed to hierarchical. So I think that's an important thing to note, is the framing. I also see Carrie nodding her head, so I'm looking at my science communication folks, but the training around science communication is not just to speak, but also to listen.
Great, thank you.
Did you notice any commonalities in what kept people from identifying already as a science communicator? What were the things, the barriers that kept them from wanting to do that?
Great question. That is not something, so we had some questions around barriers, but they didn't emerge as significant predictors. Now, the converse of some of these variables might be barriers. So a lack of mentorship, a lack of perceived support networks around science communication, whether that's, it's not rewarded in my promotion and tenure. Things like that would be barriers, so the converse of what we found. But that's something that we'll explicitly explore in our focus groups too, is wanting to think a little bit more specifically around what some of those things are. So that would be an approximation, but hopefully we'll have more for you within the next few months.
Oh, you'll hold it. Oh, thank you. So historically, the identity of extension agent would capture most, if not all, of the characteristics that you just talked about. Can you say how you think about the distinction between that kind of the typical model of agricultural research versus the science communicator as an identity? Why has the other gone away, and why is this one needed?
Yeah, that's a great insight around extension. And I would say, I think that it's connected. I think as faculty, we too have extension as part of our roles. We too fall under the tripart mission. And so that we also have a responsibility for science communication. Now, extension, that is much of their primary role. If you're a true extension agent, that is almost 100% of your time is the outreach component. So as faculty, 100% of our time is not outreach, but it is a component of our time, and it should be embedded in our teaching and research. So I think we have much to learn from our extension agents too, who really embody this immersion in the communities, on the ground, outreach component, and we also have much to learn from partnering with them to do the work of dissemination. So I think I would say that it's complementary. Good question. Yes.
I'll just jump in on that to say that you're exactly right, that extension agents are often already the science communication experts. And in fact, during the pandemic, the public health folks at Virginia Tech were doing a project in which they were turning to extension agents, especially I think in far southwest Virginia, saying, you already have the trust of your communities. How can you help us get information out about whatever it was, social distancing, vaccination, blah, blah, blah. So definitely seeing that as an expertise that already exists.
I love the inclusion of trust as an important component in that conversation. We talk about that a lot. Nice.
And I think that's what's important too, is perhaps that's a gap of what the work that we're currently doing, but might be next iterations, is that this is all from the perspective of the scientists, of the science communicators, and not from the perspective of people on the receiving end, or people who don't perceive themselves yet as scientists. So perhaps that's a gap as well, as more of those understandings of the public's trust with scientists.
Can you talk about how you're working from a couple of different disciplines? Can you talk about how working across those disciplines has created surprises or eurekas for you?
Yeah, that's a great question about our interdisciplinarity. So I would say getting to work with Dr. Perella, while we share the same department, our areas of expertise are very different. And so it's been interesting for me to get to learn about science communication and also applying a lot of the work that we've done around moving forward the field of leader identity and thinking about that in a science communication framework has been eye-opening for me. And then also getting to partner with Carrie and Patty. And again, I think our work is still about maybe halfway there. So there's more to come and seeing it unfold. I feel like we're just getting to the exciting things where we have some findings and results. And so I'm looking forward to watching that continue to develop. But I always enjoy getting to merge things, especially in a field like mine. My field is leadership. And we are inherently interdisciplinary. Our roots are from management, from education, so we really from social psychology, sociology, and so getting to pull some of that more explicitly into this research has been enjoyable.
Well, we are at time, so I want